The manga opens and we see a building of a school, and inside there appears to be a movie going on as the characters exchange their intense conversation. We start to hear a series of scribbling, which is later followed up by a teacher pointing out our main protagonist of the story. She asks Yadaka if he is even interested or paying any attention to the movie, and with a cold voice, he lets the teacher know that he doesn't give an ounce of care for Hiro and their useless problems. Now very quickly, we can just realize the hatred in his voice as he begins his rant on how heroes are useless pieces of guys who constantly need a group to fight monsters and kin, and are always shown as the right and good guys. As his teacher starts to debate with him, he just makes sure to remind her that heroes are not allies, they are slaves to humanity, and shares on how villains are the actual noble and intelligent bunch of the group. As he says some pretty serious things, from the back a student raises his arm and another student interrupts their conversation and gently asks the teacher to play the movie as he wants to watch it. He glances at Yadaka and tells him to shut up. Now Subaru is a pretty harsh guy to Yadaka, and since our main protagonist is kind of a gentle, truthful, and timid guy, he can be straightforward at times. Since Subaru cut him off, the whole class starts to mutter among themselves, and after the movie ends, their teacher shares on how this movie was based on a real-life documentary. Now after the class ended, Yadaka ends up meeting a rather positive girl, and she remarks on how his take on villains is kind of cool, and as she leaves him, his real emotions show when he is alone. He visits the restroom, and inside, while minding his business, he calls out to Goat, and in the very next second, a muscled figure with a threatening-looking goat mask emerges with a vacuum sound that was just from hell. This is the partner of Yadaka, and quickly he starts to point out about everything that went down, from Subaru actively interrupting and making a joke out of Yadaka to pointing out Mimosa, the cute girl who always seemed to be a sweet person to Yadaka. Hearing the mention of the girl, Yadaka kind of blushes and mocks on how he is stupid to care about that, but as few students walk in, Yadaka quickly hides the goat and another rumor about Yadaka surfaces. They began to recall how he is weird, who talks to himself like a fool, and they laughed on his stupid posture. In school, Yadaka is the most hated kid, with only a few students actually caring for his existence, but to everyone he is that quiet, nobody, lonely kid with a weird and disgusting attitude. To them, he is a nobody kid, but when he speaks, he doesn't hold back, and this makes others hate him. As he walks back home, he reminds himself that he is not lonely, and Goat is his actual partner, and in the first place, he doesn't need any friends. He recalls on how they met each other on a random day, but as they were walking, a window from a building cracks, and in the next second, a girl rushes towards Yadaka, and she quickly saves him from a loud crash. When she asks if he is okay or not, for a minute he completely goes into monk mode and just stares at her face, and from the back two experienced heroes join in, and with an eruptive tone they complain on how the burglars got away. The hero calls Mimosa to report everything to the headquarters, and quickly straightening up, she leaves them, and as Yadaka look ahead, he couldn't be more happier to be saved right on time. This is the world where superpowers and heroes rule, and our main protagonist, Yadaka, is a loser, with no real superpowers and a hatred toward the modern approach of heroes. He mocks on how the modern heroes are so weak that they couldn't even catch a small burglar, and on the other hand he truly believes that if burglars and other petty people didn't commit such small crimes, the world would be a slightly better place to live in. Now instead of being a hero, Yadaka wants to be the greatest villain of all time, and using his power he wants to defeat everyone. Now he has no real power as of right now and just has this goat thing around him, and on top of everything he has this magic crystal thing most people use to awaken. He checks it out and he realizes that his notebook is still at the school. He quickly rushes to the school to grab it, and since it had some sensitive stuff in it, he didn't wait. When he opens the door, he sees Subaru and his gang casually talking among each other and minding their own business, but in their hand was a notebook that belonged to Yadaka. As Subaru reminded him about how they found this near his desk, Yadaka in worry asked if they looked inside, and with a cold voice that jerk tells him that he doesn't care less for him nor his things. As they left, they laughed and wondered if Subaru's reply hurt Yadaka's feeling. This is Yadaka's actual life, a combination of pain, loneliness, confusion, ego, and a lot of talking to Goat. His goat reminds him that he can be a changed human if he uses the stone, but Yadaka is still not sure whether to use it or not. He curls up and goat convinces him to harness a power that could change the world, but Yadaka still decides to wait. The next day, the entire class was out for a trip, and as always, Yadaka was not feeling the fun. Everyone quickly made groups, and he, as always, was left behind, and he himself found everything boring, so he decided to just wander around the place, and a very light scream catches his attention. The goat quickly tells him not to push it and to remind the teacher, but as always, the ego blinds him and he glances to his class and was sure that he could do this. He brings out his phone and descends into the unknown, telling himself that he doesn't fear anything. But when he goes down, a figure quickly sneaks behind him, and in the next second, that man grabs his phone and ruins it. 3 masked men surround him and they begin to talk among themselves, and Yadaka, on the other hand, was completely unhinged for now. However, one of the men with a superpower of bringing out a toxic field pushes himself onto Yadaka, and it turns out that they were waiting for a prey to come to them to ask for ransom. They begin to ask if he remembers his parents' contact details, but as their requests were ignored, the masked man switches and he ends up asking if Yadaka is a sorry human who's a meteorite orphan. Now in the past, a meteorite collided with Earth and killed hundreds of people, and after hearing this, Yadaka stops for a while and he looks ahead to see the exit. He breathes in and out, and in the next second he spins around and punches the masked man with everything that he had. As he ran away, they began to chase him, noting on how he used something hard to hit other than a fist, and using his brain, Yadaka quickly shuts the emergency exit gate and throws a heavy piece of metal in front of it. Now Yadaka wanted to sound the fire alarm, but when he checks, it was already destroyed, and from the outside the villains were already fed up, and they decide to use superpowers to get a hold of Yadaka once again. Now as the outsiders began to melt the door, Yadaka on the other hand glares at the stone and wonders if he could use its power or something for this moment, but he has no idea what to do. To him, it is nothing more than a shiny stone that is just there to cover up the fact that it is not of value. Once the realization starts to hit him, he tears up and cries that he is not ready to accept the reality, but sadly his condition was that dire. He sits down and curls up, screaming about how his condition and things have caused this. Although he tried to talk this down to himself, he quickly gets up and starts figuring out what to do in this moment. He asks something out to Goat, but he was not there for him, and he reminds himself that he was here alone in the first place. Tears overflow, but he quickly finds a metal bar near him, and he readies himself to defend regardless of his physical flaws. He was just a skinny kid with no real strength, and to confront himself, he began hearing the voice getting stronger and stronger, and he wipes his tears and reminds himself that he is a strong soul. Yadaka mostly spent his entire life in a hospital, treated like a sorry fellow. As few doctors tell him to relax, they gossip on how they feel sorry for a human like him, who lost his parents and have no one to look after him. In between those hundreds of words filled with empty feelings, pain, interest, and just a time pass, people gave him no break. So Yadaka would often read manga, and in those manga heroes who fought villains made him want to be cool as well. He starts to remind himself in the present act that he is not pathetic, he is not pitiful, and he tells himself that he has come a long way and has done many things to make it this far. He became his own motivation, and finally he cries out to himself that he is strong, alone, noble, and the most powerful. As the masked men enter, they complain about the forever long wait that they had to do, but when they looked at Yadaka ready to defend, the masked fellow quickly brings out a similar looking stone, and he shares on how this stone gives normal people power beyond anything. Now Yadaka's eyes widen, and quickly that man swallows the stone and his entire body changes. His power increases so much that his mask falls down from his body, excessively overflowing with raw power. The tiny stone that he swallowed quickly reacted with his body and gave him strength and enhanced boost on his superpowers. Now he starts a rant for himself, and hearing the things that he mutters, Yadaka ends up laughing to his comments, and once he asked about this, Yadaka quickly pulls an Uno reverse trick on him. He shows him the massive stone and making a taunting expression and telling him that if he got a power boost that much from just a tiny stone, that today he could be witnessing the biggest dream coming to life. Now outside, no one except Mimosa was worried about Yadaka, and as she asks about him, their clueless homeroom teacher just shakes her head, showing her negligence, and from the back, a super loud explosion sends everyone into pure shock, and there, we see Goat in its fully visible form emerging while holding the loudmouth from the group. When everyone looks back, all they could do is wonder, and just near the Goat was a masked Yadaka laughing on the top of his lungs. As we zoom out, we see the real outfit and power that Yadaka just got after consuming the stone. As the villain questions existence itself, Yadaka laughs and declares that if it is his birthday, then so it is his. Everyone gets shocked from seeing a dozen-meter-tall goat and a masked figure saying some cool stuff, and the villain starts using his skill to escape. He manages to get his arm out, and in the next second he throws a large quantity of toxic towards the normal people, and Yadaka easily creates a barrier and blocks it from going over. Now he himself had no idea that he was capable of this, and even the edgy and rude Subaru was blown away by the entrance that Yadaka had, and he even yells out a thanks. Annoyed, the villain throws a spit attack toward Yadaka, but he easily comes out without any harm, and together they both beat the living crap out of him. Yadaka screams that he is not a hero and he will always crush the enemy using just his force and no one else. He shouts that everyone is his servant and no one can ever be his allies. With this, he slams an expensive and historic figure on the top of the villain's head, breaking everything. As everyone looks at this, Yadaka grabs a flower and gently he walked towards Mimosa and hands her the flower. Now she was completely stunned and she just looked at him as he walks, and quickly she blushes and Yadaka begins to dash like a fugitive. He laughs out in pure happiness and bliss, screaming that he won without anyone's help. He screams that now he can do anything and doesn't need anyone alone, but Goat joins the conversation and reminds him that he surely needs friends. Yadaka himself wants few friends and a girlfriend, as well as this ignites a fierce debate between them. The journey and cruel personality of Yadaka will develop further, shaping him into a person that is rarely found in today's stories.